weirdo or do you want it to?
If you don't really know what's going on, there's a show that also doesn't know what's going on. Call that radio TV. You call that radio. Call that radio TV. You call that radio TV.
Good evening. You're tuned in to You Call That Radio TV. And it's an absolute honour to welcome a true legend onto the show tonight. It's Attila the Stockbroker, celebrating 1, 2, 3, 4 decades of poetry and music and writing. And we did have Attila the Stockbroker on the show before, but there was a sound issue. And he interviewed himself for an hour, and it was still a brilliant show. So hopefully he can hear me today. Can you?
Yeah, I can. But it's still a sound issue. But instead of not being able to hear you at all, I can only hear you very, very faintly. I've learned a lot during lockdown about tech, but I'm still absolutely useless at it. I mean, I've learned, you can see that my face is really, really, for those who are watching rather than listening, you can see that my face is very, very sort of white and all the rest of it. But it normally isn't because my camera's not working. But I'm not even going to worry about that because this is mainly it's about the words and it's not about the visuals.
It's all about the words and it's all about yourself. Congratulations for decades of poetry and music. And you're on a European tour that will be wheeling into Glasgow City on this Saturday at the Icebox, which we're all very excited about.
And it's my first, I'd say my first proper gig in Glasgow for more than 10 years. I was reminded that I actually did a gig at the university, at Glasgow Uni, about 5 years ago. It was organised by some people from the Socialist Music Archive or something, but without dissing them in any way, they didn't really do any publicity. So only the sort of their mates really, plus the people that I'd sort of publicised it to on my Facebook page, found out about it. But I mean, obviously you're brilliant and you do a really good job with all that. So it looks like we're going to have a really good, well, we will have a really good night, but I think it looks like we'll have a really good night with a decent crowd as well, which would be brilliant. I mean, it really is. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a long time. So thanks very much for getting this together at short notice, mate.
That's no problem at all, mate. It's an honour. It's an honour. It's because obviously it's been a bit of a busy time, but I seen that you were going to be in Scotland anyway. And it was we got a bit lucky as well that the Icebox had an availability because there's gigs that still haven't happened in Glasgow since March 2020. So there's a bit of a backlog. So most of the decent venues are booked up till 2025. So, but we've got the Icebox, which is a great venue. I'll put a link in the comments if anyone's want to come along. But Attila the Stockbroker live at the Icebox. This is one of my favourite venues in Glasgow. They've done so much great work over lockdown. I don't think you've been there before yourself, but I was explaining to you that they've done during lockdown when there was no live gigs. They did a food bank, a pet food bank, the free clothes for refugees, free books for kids.
Yeah, I've read all about it. It's great.
So record shop at the front, venue at the back, and it's this Saturday. If you don't have your ticket, I'll put a link in the comments to it. So it's been. When was the first time you played Glasgow? Let's go back to memories of Glasgow. Do you remember your first time you came up here?
Well, one of the first ones, although it wasn't actually obviously in Glasgow, was Paisley Tech. That would have been 82, 83 when I first started out. I did. I mean, in the 80s, I used to come up every year and do the Fringe when it was first starting out. From 82 onwards, every year I come up, do the Fringe. That time, me and Benjamin Zephaniah and Jules and people like that were playing the assembly rooms, and in between the gigs, I'll go to watch a lot of football. I went to as many Scottish lower division games as I possibly could, and had a really good time. But I'm just trying to think the first actual gig I did in Glasgow in the 80s, other than Paisley Tech, would have been one of the punk places. I really can't remember, to be honest. It was the fact of the matter is, mate, all the way through my 40 years, it is completely ridiculous. I've never done anywhere near enough gigs in Scotland. I mean, I've toured Australia 4 times, Canada 6 times, the States 4 times, New Zealand 3 times, and played about 600 gigs in mainland Europe. But the only places I've ever really played in Scotland in the main have been Edinburgh, mostly during the festival, plus a few bits and pieces. So I've been to Aberdeen. I've never played sort of Dundee. I mean, I've never on this. I think the Monday after the Tuesday after the gig at the Icebox, I'm actually playing in Stirling, which will not only be my first gig in Stirling, but it will actually really be my first gig in Scotland that isn't in Aberdeen. So that isn't in Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Paisley Tech, or what's that other place? Haddington. I've played in Haddington. It's ridiculous. Basically, one of my manifestos, especially now that Brexit is really curtailing, sadly, the band playing mainland Europe. I'm doing all the mainland European gigs solo. I really do want to do more gigs in Scotland. So if you're interested and you live somewhere other than Glasgow or Edinburgh, I'd really like to hear from you. I've got a little poem that I wrote though, because it's a long time ago, but you can tell if you know my real name is John Bain, and you will immediately recognise that is a Scottish name. So this poem is called Old Acquaintance. My old paternal ancestors were Scottish, hence the name. I don't mean stockbroker, of course. I mean my real one, Bain, a line of Greenock Coopers, enclosures of good ale. But there is little solace for the saltire in this tale. The last one left for South London in roughly 1840, so claims of Scottish ancestry would really be quite naughty. I went to Greenock Morton once to check out the old hood. They were at home to Hibs that day, and they weren't very good. The Highbees were no better. The game finished 0-0, and truth to tell would still be so if they were playing still. There you go.
Amazing.
Yes, it was truly dreadful, actually. But I've been lots of Scottish. Meadowbank Thistle. In the 80s, I was with the Meadowbank Thistle Break Club. They had a fancy called AWOL. About 250 people in the old athletics, big athletics stadium. You know. But anyway, we don't want to talk about Edinburgh. We want to talk about Glasgow. And to be frank, as I say, I haven't ever done as many gigs in Glasgow as I should do. So I'm really looking forward to it. The only sad thing is that I will be driving back to Edinburgh because I'm staying with family in Edinburgh. I've only got one day off the tour for my stepson's birthday. So I won't be able to have too much beer, or probably any beer, or maybe one, which is a shame. But there we go. I'm really looking forward to the gig, and thank you very much for organising it.
No worries at all, man. And I think it's quite good to talk about. I don't know what you're I'm assuming you were a football fan before the poetry thing started, but what I really liked was when you were talking about before about how you kind of tied in your away games with your poetry gigs. Could you talk a little bit about that? Is that how you kind of travelled up and down England?
Well, I'm doing it again this time. I mean, obviously. So what I've got coming up as the first gig of the tour. Actually, well, I'm doing a local one on Thursday. But the first gig of the tour really is Glasgow on Saturday, then Edinburgh Sunday, Stirling Monday. Then it's my stepson's birthday, so we've got a day off, and then I'm doing Berwick, and then Durham at the old cinema laundrette, which is a similar sort of variation on the Icebox in that it's an actual functioning laundrette and a cinema and a venue, which is pretty cool as well. And then Middlesbrough, and then Brighton are playing away at Newcastle, or Saudi Arabia as I now call them, so I shall be there. And then I'm playing in Sunderland with my mates Red London, celebrating the great Menzies, Thomas Mensforth, who obviously the singer of the Angelic Upstarts, who was a good personal mate of mine. It was obviously very, very sad that he died because of COVID. Yes, as much as possible, not so much as I used to, but I still organise the gigs around the away games. I'm also the shirt sponsor for my little local village team, AFC Southwick, now as well. And of course, since we hardly ever play on Saturday afternoons anymore, I get to a lot of their games too. So yeah, I mean, as always, I'm out there doing stuff, and it was really, for everybody, as for me, it was really really difficult, the 2 years off from gigging. But obviously, there's far more people, many people far worse off than us performers, in terms of what COVID did. But it's really good to get back out there again. I'm so looking forward to it, but still being careful. I mean, don't agree with what Johnson did today. I think it is really important to try and get stuff back together as much as possible. But I think abandoning all these sort of protocols and just basically saying you've got it, you can sort of spread it around to people, I think that's completely irresponsible. Certainly, if I get COVID on tour, and I'm feeling rough, I won't be doing a gig every night. I'll be cancelling them because it's not fair. I mean, it really isn't fair. Equally, I would hope that people who were coming to see me, if they knew that they were, it's not a question of testing every day, but if you knew you got it and you were feeling horrible, that you wouldn't actually go out. So anyway, but I mean, it is good to be out there again, and and it is a matter of balance. Obviously, I'm not for a moment saying that we shouldn't be doing that we shouldn't be getting out there again now, but I just think we should be doing a lot more careful. And obviously, what Johnson wants to do is save his skin, as he's always trying to do. It's disgusting. He's still there after what's happened in the last few months.
No, that's it. It's just sort of a nice little distraction from the ongoing Partygate saga.
Exactly.
What was good though? You're one of the artists that found a way to still connect with your audience over lockdown with the Attila the Stockbroker Presents. Is that what it was called? And it was like
Attila the Stockbroker introduces.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, the thing is, it all fitted together in a funny. I didn't plan it at all, but it fitted together in as much as for years now I've been using Facebook as not just as a vehicle for my poetry and songs, but I write articles. It's a kind of a blog, but it's pieces on Facebook. And they're reaching a big audience. And I've got 40,000 followers on there now, and there's a lot of people who are on there really for my writing as much as for the poetry or the music. So what I did was I set up a page, a sort of a page alongside that. And while I broadcast on my big Attila the Stockbroker Facebook page myself, and raised quite a lot of money for food banks and people that are really, and musicians who had no longer got any income. Obviously, I mean, it's easier for me. I'm older. I've been doing this a long time. We're reasonably okay. But for people a third of my age who are starting out trying to earn a living playing music, I mean, it's been ghastly. So I did some gigs raising money for them, raised money for local food banks and people that are really suffering. And also I set up a page, a group page called Attila the Stockbroker Introduces, where I invited like-minded performers, if you like, to using because that got 7,500 people on it now, using the reach that I have to give people in lockdown looking for something new to watch or listen to, so new performers that I haven't heard before, and obviously giving performers the chance to reach new audiences and get a few tips and sell some merch. And it was brilliant. It's worked really, really well. I mean, the problem for me, as you can tell from tonight, again, is the tech thing. I have an atavistic inability to understand technology, but equally I'm driven and organized. So I make myself understand the basic minimum. But unfortunately, it never gets beyond that. It's like a mental block. I can speak foreign languages, I can play lots of instruments, but I'm hopeless at maths or sciences, and I don't understand. I can't, my wife calls DIY destroy it yourself. I mean, I don't even try that. So it's a matter of, people are good at different things, and I just find it very hard. But I've got it together enough to be able to do this, obviously to be able to broadcast on my page. I shall stick this up on my big Attila page afterwards, if you send me the link, so people can see it. I mean, the really good thing about the comeback, if you like, for all of us is it just gives us the chance to get out and connect again. Because I was reaching, many thousands of people with some of my broadcasts. But honestly, I mean, I don't know how many we're going to have there on Saturday, maybe 40, 50, 60, 70 people. But honestly, it means a lot more to me to play to 50 people in the flesh than 500 people sitting in my office in Southwick. I mean, that's what I do. I've earned my living at this for 40 years. It's a wonderful privilege, but it's about communication. And although obviously the internet is a really good second best at times like lockdown, and it was incredible help and incredibly good. It's not the same.
Yeah, but how would lockdown have been like in the 90s? Can you imagine that?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, absolutely, totally. I mean, I've always said for people who are a lot younger than me, I started in 1980, and mailing lists were 2,000 stamps, 2,000 envelopes, and it worked. It really did work. You go to the gig, the people put their address down, and you send them a letter with a mail out in it, and then they send back and they buy your merch or whatever, or come to your gigs. Now, of course, you just do. You do your stuff. They join your Facebook or your email address on your website. And it's all just done this way. I mean, it's just a million times easier. Obviously, there are really bad things about social media, but I try and avoid them all. I run my page as a forum for people. Not everyone has to agree with me, but you have to be civil. Obviously, no racism or sexism and all that sort of stuff, but also no abuse, no threats of violence or any of this stupid stuff. and I've got 40,000 people on there, and almost always now it's good. You don't have to agree, but people treat each other with respect, and idiot sort of anti-vax or whatever sort of things just get argued with.
I've seen it.
They become too persistent. They get binned. But I like to give people the right to express their views as long as they're not being complete idiots. Basically, that's it's good. I mean, it's a really good platform. All I've ever wanted. Sorry, I'm monopolising the conversation a bit at the moment. I do that. All I've ever really wanted is to be able to express myself and earn my living on my own terms. And I've done that for 40 years. And in recent years, obviously, I've been able to use the internet to do that as well. And obviously, lockdown gave me the opportunity to really broaden that. So actually, in many ways, I had a really good lockdown. I mean, I certainly, I certainly reach even more people now. I mean, some of my posts reach sort of 40, 50,000 people. And that's brilliant. But the main thing that I do, the thing I love most, the whole thing it's about live performance. And I'm just really looking forward to getting back to it again.
Well, Louise has got her tickets already. Well done, Louise. Good to see you back on air, Mark. Says George, it's good to be back. Thanks, George. Alan Rodison says, absolutely spot on about Boris Johnson. The frightening thing is that after his parties and breaking the rules during lockdown while imposing the rules, who knows how people will behave.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's basically, if the Prime Minister basically says, well, we're going to make these rules and we're going to break them, then why should anybody else? And I mean, all the people who just, who lost people and they couldn't go and see them while they're partying. And I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, of course, you're so lucky in Scotland because you have a completely different culture and a completely different political system. And above all, you don't have the servile, 4 unelected billionaires controlling the brains of everybody, or most people who read newspapers, the over 40s, now over 60s, really. There's much more skepticism and independence, literally, and intelligence north of the border when it comes to, government, and specifically Tory government. Which and I frankly, although I've basically I absolutely believe in unity, but personally now I think you lot, if I was up there, I'd be just sick of it and say, let's have independence, let's do things ourselves. Because having put up with these governments for decades now that you never voted for. I mean, I'm now in the camp for Scottish independence as someone with Scottish roots go back to 1840. I'm not everyone will agree with that, but I mean, I just don't see how you put up with Johnson and being ruled by Tories anymore.
Yeah, well, I think everyone's had enough of it. I had enough of it, and especially now you've got Starmer as the opposition, and he's a nightmare as well. So it's just like, God, I don't know. But obviously, it's a strange time up here as well because obviously with all the lockdown policies and the restrictions, that's also hampered popularity of Sturgeon and SNP, I would say as well. So it's quite interesting, the polls. I think that nobody's particularly popular up here. I would say everyone's sort of taking a bit of a hit. But I suppose there was that element of when, because obviously when the media were destroying Corbyn, it seemed like there was some really good policies that were coming. There seemed to be a bit of a movement going. And then Starmer comes in, and it just seems to have taken sort of the wind out the sails of any notion of
absolutely. I mean, the Corbyn was there was complete assassination, a media assassination of Corbyn because the ruling class knew that they had to do everything they could to stop him getting elected. So they did it. And now they've got something a lot more favourable. My view, I mean, I am, ABT, anything but Tory. Which is why, I absolutely support Labour still, despite Starmer. My wife's a Labour councillor. And in Scotland, I support the SNP because in the main, the SNP have got the best chance of beating the Tories. But one of the crucial things, and very few people say this, but it is actually true. The reason that Corbyn, Labour, didn't win the 2017 election was actually because Unionists in Scotland, Labour voting people who supported Scotland staying in the Union, actually voted Tory to keep out the SNP. And that is the reason why we've got a Tory, government, and why we had a Tory government in 2017. That's they won about 18 seats in Scotland, or a lot more than they had previously, and it's for that reason. And that is just
also
disgusting.
a lot of
absolutely disgusting, which is why Scottish Labour for me, frankly, have finished. Really, I don't want to piss anybody off, but it really is. It just seems to me hopeless up there now. I mean, and it's not nationalism in the sort of nasty sense. It's a kind of just a sense of, you know, of independence. It's like punk in a way. You know, you want to actually run your own life and not be told what to do by people you didn't vote for.
DIY, do it yourself.
Absolutely, it's what I've always done. That's what we do. That's why I'm playing in Glasgow. That's why all these gigs that I'm doing are DIY. I had one fall through the other day. I just put it up on Facebook, and within half an hour, I got 3 offers of different ones. So it's fine. That's how it works, you know. That's why I've always done it. I've always run my own gigs. I not only run my own gigs, you may know, I put on a festival, Glastonbury. I organise a lot of gigs for other people. You know, I'm very active. I try and help people in the cultural community that I'm in as much as you know, further what I'm doing myself. That's an incredibly important part of what I do for me, is to help especially younger people and people who haven't had the kind of opportunities that I've got. You know. So
what about? I understand that there's a special 40th anniversary book that you've brought out for to mark the occasion. So is that like a kind of a best of?
It is indeed. It's,
so what was it? How
badly prepared? I haven't got a copy with me, but it's called Heart on My Sleeve, and it's there's another poster with it on. It's literally my collected works. It's all my best poems and songs up until from 1980 when I started until 2020. And plus some, because it was delayed, obviously because lockdown. I mean, this is the whole thing. My 40th anniversary was actually September the 8th, 1980 was my first gig. So September the 8th, 2020, I was supposed to be playing at Dingwalls in London 2 days later with a huge cast of my comrades over the years and doing a great big tour. And obviously all that was cancelled. So the book launch was postponed. It came out last year, obviously it did a few gigs last year, but not that many. And now I'm out promoting it properly. It's published by Cherry Red Books. It's called Heart on My Sleeve. I will be turning up in Glasgow and Edinburgh and everywhere in Scotland, well, everywhere, say Stirling as well, with a very large merch stall featuring my collected works, my autobiography, my new dub poetry vinyl album, my early music stuff, my punk stuff, 3 books of poetry, some more CDs, loads of stuff. Basically, it's the World Trade Center, as Leibach called it. So yeah, I mean, anyone who's interested in getting the book or any of the other stuff that I've put out over the years, they'll all be on sale. Which is one of the reasons why I can't come on the train to Glasgow and have some beer, because I couldn't possibly carry all the blooming merch with me in a rucksack like I used to when I was 20.
Well, hopefully it's heavy going into the venue and it's light going out as the locals come on out to Glasgow, to the Icebox on Saturday and support the show and buy some merch as well. And also, a wee shout out, if there's anyone who really wants to go to the gig and is absolutely skint but would like to come down, then give us a shout. I think there might be a couple of guest lists that we can give away.
Absolutely, no problem. As far as I'm concerned, that's absolutely totally spot on. People who are skint, you're welcome to come and pay whatever you can afford. That's not a problem at all.
Absolutely. Frank Rafferty says, even if everyone in Scotland had voted Labour, we'd still have a Tory government at Westminster. So you're wrong on that one, mate. I knew that wouldn't be a popular thing to say. But yeah, I think he's talking about, if because of.
I'm talking about people not voting Labour. I'm talking about the way forward now in most places is for people to are SNP to keep to get the Tories out. In the few seats there are still Tories. Yes, you're right in the sense that if every single Scottish seat was not Tory, every single one would still have a Tory government, which is the argument for independence.
Why is Boris?
I'm presumably the person
still popular?
That put that up is an SNP supporter. So my answer is I completely agree with you. I support what you're saying.
Do you think Boris Johnson, I mean, it looks like the polls say that he's not as popular anymore, but we've never quite understood up north why people like Boris Johnson. Do you think that people are genuinely pissed off with him this time? Do you think if there's an election tomorrow, do you think people would vote for him?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really strange one, this. I mean, because obviously, I'm absolutely with you. And there seems to be a completely different mentality in England as opposed to Scotland, just in terms of what you might describe as cap doffing, servility, especially, it's Brighton, where we live, well, just on the outskirts of it, is solidly Labour and very radical. But it's the kind of working class places in the north and Essex that tend to be really, working class people basically saying, we like Boris Johnson because because Corbyn didn't wear a suit and he didn't bow to the Queen. It's not even so much as liking Boris Johnson, liking the Tories. It's not liking Labour because they don't fit into the kind of English idea of traditional servility. And again, it is my generation. It's, I mean, this is an age thing. It really is. It's the over 50s. I mean, the English youth now are thoroughly pissed off with the whole thing. It's my generation. Sadly, I've got poems about, you'll hear one on Saturday. I got poems about just all the people of my age who were punks and mods and sort of hippies or whatever, and they're now sitting in their bungalows voting Tory. I mean, it's just really, really sad. I think people are pissed off with him. Obviously, there is a fundamental reason now, which is that obviously people were told that they had to exercise restraint, not go and see their loved ones when they were dying, and all the rest of it. And people did that. And then to hear that the actual Prime Minister and the government were having parties. I mean, it's about as extreme as you can get. But then you're going to find people sitting in the pub, yeah, well, I know he did that, but there's the anti-vaxxers, first of all. They'll go, well, he was right to do that because no one should have had it anyway. And then there'll be other ones going, yeah, I know he did that, but flag. But Union Jack, but England, there is this strange nationalism, which is, and there's a completely different English nationalism is of a completely different character to Scottish nationalism. There's something, at least from my encountering of it, there's something, Scottish nationalism or Scottish independence looks outward. English nationalism looks inward, hence Brexit. I mean, what a nonsense. And the interesting thing about this is that there's a big contrast with Wales. Scotland's, obviously, Scottish Labour has completely collapsed. But Drakeford has done a really good job in Wales. And most significantly, he's linked up with Plaid. And saying that they're going to sort of make an arrangement, because the worst thing of all this, and I don't need to tell you because you know this already, we're the only country in Europe which uses the first past the post electoral system, and that is the root of all evil, because these blooming bastards are getting in with 42% of the vote every time, and the reason that happens is because of the electoral system. And it's not even a grown-up way of voting. It's not a grown-up way of deciding governments. Every other country in mainland Europe uses some form of PR, and we should be using it too.
I think that it's maybe the whole system of having political parties is my issue. I don't like any of them because I think it just encourages hypocrisy. So if you have someone in your party does something bad, then you say, let's wait till all the facts come out. Let's respect the investigation. But when the other guy from the other team does it, then you shout them down. And it just feels like people can't vote. They can't vote with their own heart and their own intentions, because
this is it. Absolutely. I mean, if we had PR, then we could all split off and do what we want. I mean, Labour would split into its component parts, the sort of left and the right. The Lib Dems will be the Libs, the Greens will be the Greens, the Tories would probably there'd be the Tories, and there would be some sort of far right party. But everybody could vote for what they actually believe in, rather than we've got to make compromises all the time. And I'm determined to sort out the as much as we can the local issues with the Greens and have a united front at the next elections, because actually down here we're doing very well. I mean, we're hopefully we're going to take Worthing for Labour for the first time in history next May, which is amazing. It's the electoral system is at the root of so much of the trouble, and that's obviously the case. But anyway,
so is Brighton? I've been to Brighton a few times. I usually go down for the Brighton Fringe every year when I can.
Yeah, sure.
And I've always really enjoyed Brighton. Is that kind of a bit more left leaning, or what's the kind of vibe down
totally.
there?
I mean, Brighton and Hove, and Brighton and Hove is really left leaning, and it's spreading out now to where we are. My wife became the first ever Labour councillor for Southwick Green last May, and over in Worthing now we've gone from 0 seats in 2017 to 17 now, and on the verge of taking control of the council. So yeah, I mean, it's our bit is progressive, Anyway, let's talk more about the music and poetry, and
let's talk about music. Let's go music.
I mean, I think it's I think what you're doing represents something that is. I mean, one of my next album, which is a dub poetry album. I've got this brilliant producer called Kingsley Salmon, who's 30 from Harlow, who's been working with Freddie McGregor in the Big Fish studio in Kingston, Jamaica recently. So you couldn't make it up. And he's doing stuff for me. And my next album, dub poetry album, it's called 40 Years in Rhyme. And when I started off, I actually say on one of the tracks, when I started off, spoken word was people talking to each other. Now it's a genre. I mean, this is because I've seen the whole development of this, and what you're doing, and what and what all the spoken word performers around the country are doing is something that simply didn't exist when I started. And one of the things that this tour is celebrating is the way that this form, which back in the day it was just me. Well, it was okay. It was there were the beat poets. There was the Liverpool poets. There was Johnny Clark and Linton and me and Ben Zephaniah. But that was it really, and then we all broadened out with the ranters and then it all just took off. And what is really, really good now is that it's just everywhere, and it's in so many different forms. Hip hop, like I say in the poem, ranting verse, reggae chat, hip hop, crime, and all of that. We're simply spoken word, voices shouting to be heard. Respect to my fellow man from Cooper Clark to Yellow Man, Stormzy, Tempest, and Luke Wright. Spoken word is doing all right. When I began, there was no scene. Looking back on all that's been 40 years of chatting rhyme, having a fantastic time. This is what I'm celebrating really with this tour. It's not really so much about me. It's about the development of the culture, which I I suppose without being too big-headed, I was one of the originators of.
100% you were, and your name's come up on the show a few times when we've spoke to other people. When we go back, 'cause we do have. Let's go back to that then. Because my understanding is obviously, I've played a gig. I've shared the stage with John Cooper Clark, the legend, as well, and just going back to that time, I'm just trying to put myself into that position whereby there wasn't a spoken word scene in the UK. I think it was maybe beat poetry happening in America at the time. I'm not really sure. It was a bit before my time, but going on stage before like a punk band, and then just what was it? Terrifying. Not wondering I've been on stage in front of a punk band these days, and it's difficult when the crowd are drunk and they're expecting music. So I'm just trying to put myself into your shoes 40 years back and imagine what did it feel like before you went on that stage?
Well, it was, when I started off, that's what we did. And I've always been very confident and quite sure, not just sure of myself in terms of my words, but quite sure of myself physically too. Because it wasn't just that it wasn't just the fact that I was being doing spoken word in front of punk at a punk gig or punk skinhead gigs. It was the fact that that I was taking anti-fascist poetry to audiences where there were fascist elements, or indeed, or rather more sort of saliently, a few fascists trying to stir up other people who had nothing into following fascist ideas, and I was confronting them head on, which meant that I was getting into fights, which meant that, I was attacked on stage. Actually, it's coming up to the 40th anniversary, the biggest ruck of all, the Skunks in Islington in 1982. And it was kind of, but the fundamental thing was that most of the time, if you got up on stage and you got, again, without being too big-headed, and your words were good and people could relate to them, then people responded, and it worked. And it really did work. I was taking on these audiences and winning them over, which then meant that I could do the smaller gigs on my own terms. And then I got a Peel session and another Peel session and deal with Cherry Red Records. So by the sort of mid 1982, I was reaching a lot of people, and then it was on the front cover of Melody Maker, which that helped as well. And what happened after that was, obviously there's the flavour of the month thing. There's a stupid thing about just the world of the entertainment industry, where you're flavour of the month for a bit, and then you're last year's thing. And that's what happened to me. And I was actually flavour of the month when I wasn't very good. And by the time I got good, I was told that my time was up. But it didn't dent my confidence at all. I just started doing it all myself, and that's what I've done ever since. It's 40 years now, and I think the last time I had an agent or a manager would have been the sort of mid to late 80s. And apart from my big books, I've brought out all my own books and many of my own records. I have record companies doing them all over the world, really. But yeah, and the other thing, of course, is because some of what I do is music. I've got a band. I do a lot of, I've done 4 albums of sort of melodic punky, sort of political punky stuff. But I've always really wanted to combine early music and punk, and that's what I'm doing with my band Barnstormer 1649. And now I'm doing this dub poetry project as well. So I'm involved in so many different areas, because I'm not just doing the spoken word stuff. I'm doing music. I play a lot of instruments. I write a lot of different songs. It's fascinating, and I'm constantly looking for new ideas and constantly looking to develop and change. And hunting, like I was saying again in the poem, old punk on a new trip, not a tried and true trip, not a special brew trip, not a disnewed trip, checking out fresh styles, bringing tears and smiles from the Outer Hebrides to the Seven Dials. Beer, I like it hoppy, verse I like it stroppy. Sometimes I get personal, but I don't like it soppy.
Amazing. I want to go back to the band stuff, but the Barnstormer stuff. But before I forget, you did mention the dub poetry there, and we did time for a quick sound check before we went live, and it was sounding great. Are you up for giving us a little?
Yeah, I will. I'm sure I'll do one. I'll just do one for you. I'll do one for you. This one, let's hope it works. This is one that I wrote basically about Sid, who bought his British Gas shares, and now his mum is in serious trouble. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he better buy her one or two, because she's getting very cold and she's getting very old and she doesn't know just what she's going to do. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he better buy her one today, because her gas bills come and her feet are going numb and she doesn't know just how she's going to pay. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he better buy her 3 or 4, because all she wants to do is cry, all she wants to do is die when she hears the bailiffs banging on the door. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he better hang his head in shame. A mother and a wife who worked hard all her life, now she's cold and alone, and Sid's to blame for regeneration of this greed-ravaged nation. We need renationalisation without compensation. For regeneration of this greed-ravaged nation, we need renationalisation without compensation. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he better buy a 5 or 6, because he should have used his brain, not been conned yet again by the Tories and their privatising tricks. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper, because she pays the price for what he did when he joined the sorry mass who bought shares in British Gas, sold her heritage to make themselves a quid. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he better buy a 7 or 8. He's a scared little mouse in his cosy little house as he sees the anger turning into hate. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he should have thought of that before, because when the poor find their voice, there will be a stark choice: civil society or civil war. For regeneration of this greed-ravaged nation, we need renationalisation without compensation. For regeneration of this greed-ravaged nation, we need renationalisation without compensation. And if the bankers press whale, occupy the Daily Mail and shut down the Sun, let justice be done. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper. Tell Sid he better buy a 9 or 10. But he did what he was told when Royal Mail was sold, and he went and bought a load of shares again. Tell Sid he better buy his mum a jumper, because it really is about time that he did. But he's so busy, dear. Visits 3 times a year. So if she dies cold and alone, tell Sid if she dies cold and alone, tell Sid UK energy providers freezing pensioners, not prices. Enough is enough. Let's take back the power. Let's have the railways back too, and the stinking utilities poisoning our seas with sewage. Go on, Sid, you're a selfish git, mate. Get your head out of the Daily Mail, switch off X Factor, and go and visit your mum before it's too late. There you go. Hang on, just turn it off.
about.
You call that radio?
Makes coherent sense.
Absolutely fantastic. Tell Siddy better buy his mum a jumper.
I will say the only thing I would say about that is obviously it's a bit more my generation specific than yours, because you need to be a certain age to remember the disgusting British gas advertising campaign of the mid-80s, which was basically encouraging working class people to buy shares in stuff that they already owned. And Sid was the guy who was being told to buy these shares because no one could find him, and they needed to find him so he could get a load of shares and make some money, and therefore vote Tory. That was the idea.
Well, I don't actually remember the specific advert of Sid. I was probably just a bit too young to remember the advert. But I totally got it, the concept. And that makes it even better with a bit more context to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cost of living just now going through the roof. And I mean, this is what the thing is about, you know, that was, I don't want to go back to Starmer stuff, but there's nothing radical about £10 minimum wage.
No.
By the time that gets put through, what's that?
I mean, the really sad thing is that Starmer he thinks that he is going to get a majority by appealing, like to the people that I've said before, older people, mainly from England, who voted Tory because the Daily Mail told them to. That's who the people that he's trying to win over. But at the same time, by doing that, he's losing all the young radicals who came into politics because they were inspired by the ideas of Corbyn. I mean, I was expelled from the Labour Party in 1997, and I rejoined when Jeremy Corbyn became leader. Now, I'm not sectarian.
What did you get expelled for?
I want anything but the Tories. I want anything ABT, anything but Tory. And let's, it's like the political version of kill them all and let God sort it out. Let's just get them out and then deal with what we got left.
What did you get expelled for, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I was expelled for organising. This is how ridiculous the tribalism is. I've always been very, very much against the first past the post system. And in 1997, when I knew that Brighton, or Hove rather, had a good chance of electing the very first ever Labour MP, I organised a tactical voting campaign for people in my constituency just along the coast to vote Liberal Democrat in exchange for Liberal Democrats in Hove voting Labour. And I'm not taking all the credit for it, but it worked. I mean, my bit would be a very small amount, but it worked. Ivor Kaplan got in, and he congratulated me from the stage for the idea and for the help that I gave him. And then I nearly got into a fight at our count in East Worthing and Shoreham because I'd been encouraging people to vote Lib Dem in exchange. And I was thrown out of the party for organising a tactical voting campaign, even though I'd actually helped get get the first ever Labour MP for Hove elected. That is just how petty and tribalistic the stuff is, you know.
So the way I understand it is that Corbyn's not even, he's not a part of the whip or whatever. So he's sort of basically can't
he's
get
been readmitted into the party, but he's not allowed to. He's not going to be allowed to stand at the moment. He's not going to be allowed to stand as an MP at the next election.
And
which
yet
means he'll stand as an independent, which will they'll just be a bloody nightmare. I mean, it's ridiculous.
They let a literal Tory cross over. I can't remember his name. There was that literal Tory cross.
Yeah, the Tory who crossed over can be a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, but Jeremy Corbyn, who's devoted his entire life to the Labour movement, can't.
So do you think? I mean, obviously, so the pros and cons of this what Starmer's trying to do is he's obviously lost a whole load of the left and just people who because he just seems like he seems like that typical car salesman politician, like, you know, David Cameron, Tony Blair, without as much charm or as much as quick. He's not as quick-witted as either of them. But do you think, because obviously the way that Boris Johnson has pissed off so many people, because at the end of the day, he's not conservative. I mean, Theresa May even wouldn't be having parties, and you wouldn't think she'd be having mad raves during the lockdown. So, I mean, Boris Johnson's so far away from what conservatives is, which is, you know, personal responsibility and all that bullshit that they like to talk about all the time. And it's moved so far away from it. So do you think that maybe there could be enough conservatives who will go to the?
Yeah, I think we'll do well in the local elections.
Yeah.
Can I just do one more piece before I go?
I would love to. But before you do that,
I want to do because, you know, we've just been talking about
feedback from the last one. Brilliant, said about your last poem. Your last song, your dub poetry. Brilliant. Jamesy, man, was loving it. Louise saying, I remember that. My dad used to go mad. If you see Sid, tell him, years old, we'll need £20 minimum wage next year, says Louise.
Absolutely.
This is I've got the actual Sid advert. I'll check that out in a second.
Yeah.
Kirstine says FTT, which I believe stands for Feck the Tories, I'm sure.
It does.
Mark
indeed.
McInnes is loving it. Stuart Graham's in the house. Angela says excellent. Louise has given a rose, I believe. Hi, says Jamesy. And Frank said that he got jailed in Brighton many years back on a right to work march.
I performed on the Right to Work campaign march. We actually ended up supporting the Jam because they did a secret gig for us. There was the Jam, and it was the very first ever gig. Here's a bit of history, pop fans. The very first ever gig by the Alarm, I compared, and it was supporting the Jam on a Right to Work march. They turned up fully formed with all the hair and everything. And Mike Peters said, "Can we do a spot?" So I asked Paul Weller's dad, who was their manager, and he went, "Who are they with their stupid hair?" And I said, "They're called the Alarm." And he said, "Well, yeah, all right, give them 10 minutes. So I actually compared the Alarm's first sort of gigs. Obviously, they're from Wales and they come to London. So anyway, yeah, I want to do one more for you, and I want to go back to the whole thing of the vaccinations and everything, because it is so important to stand up, not just to stand up against all the lies and everything. But the stupid thing about the anti-vax movement is that some of them actually think that in somehow, that they're being anti-government. It's not the government that's telling us to get vaccinated. It's science. I mean, I take pills for my high blood pressure and my cholesterol. I've survived bladder cancer thanks to an operation from the NHS. I trust the science. It's nothing to do with the Tories. So my answer to the anti-vaxxers would be, well, if the government told you to not jump under a bus, would you jump under a bus to disobey the government? It's the same sort of thing. Anyway, so this is a call to arms, quite literally, for anyone who hasn't had a jab already, from Skaro, the planet Skaro, home of the Daleks. And here we go.
Locate, annihilate.
This little rat's it to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze. You'll be on your knees with just one sneeze. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Listen to the Daleks, please. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Bloody hell. It's a pandemic running through the world at a rate systemic. Let me spell out my position. I'm 64 with a lung condition. Let's all work hard to avoid it till researchers have destroyed it. Don't get cranky. Don't be a fogey. Use that hanky. Bin that bogey. This little rap said to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze. You'll be on your knees with just one sneeze. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Listen to those Daleks, please. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Please be kind to give assistance. Always do it at a distance. Get your normal shopping done. There's enough for everyone. Panic buying, stupid caper. Put back all that toilet paper. What a really crap idea. Just chill out and have a beer. This little rap said to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze. You'll be on your knees with just one sneeze. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Listen to those Daleks, please. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Hear the Daleks, hear the Daleks. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Don't vacillate. Vaccinate. New dance called the Pontius Pilate. Time we all learn to freestyle it. Water, hands and a bar of soap. Clean under a microscope. No, don't scratch your dirty bridge. Then go down and raid the fridge. Please keep safe. Please keep well. Coronavirus, go to hell. This little rap said to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze. You'll be on your knees with just one sneeze. It's a disease coming on the breeze. One more time for the Daleks, please. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Hear the Daleks, hear the Daleks. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Here we go. Don't get ill with this disease. Get the jab in your arm, please. Trust the doctor's expertise, not conspiracy theories. Don't get ill with this disease. Get the jab in your arm, please. Trust the doctor's expertise, not conspiracy theories. Zonga, 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 zen. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Zonga, 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 zen. Vaccinate, vaccinate. Let's have a bit of Dillinger, shall we? Don't let it in your house. If you get a souse, it's worse than crab louse. Don't let it in your house. If you get a souse, it's worse than crab louse. I am not a liar. It's worse than gonorrhea. You'll be burning with the fire. I am not a liar. It's worse than gonorrhea. You'll be burning with the fire. Don't get ill with this disease. Get the jab in your arm, please. Trust the doctor's expertise. Anti-vaxxers talk knob cheese. Don't get ill with this disease. Get the jab in your arm, please. Trust the doctor's expertise. Anti-vaxxers talk knob cheese. Anti-vaxxers talk knob cheese. Anti-vaxxers talk knob cheese. What do anti-vaxxers talk? Knob cheese. What do anti-vaxxers talk? Knob cheese. There we go. Attila the Stockbroker and the Daleks. Vaccinate, vaccinate. It's all on Bandcamp if you're interested. There we go. That's I think that's cool. Oh no, hang on. No, we need to shut that
off. Amazing stuff. Yes, more, says Louise. Yep, some rep, says James A. Mann. Anti-vaxxers do indeed talk knob cheese, says Alan Rodison. We do have someone who's a bit of a vaccination skeptic. I don't think she would like the phrase anti-vaxxer. She's saying, she's disagreeing. She says, love you, call out radio freedom. Also agree with the freedom for this guy to express their opinion of vaccines. However, I'm allowed my freedom to say, nah, mate. That would be in a Yorkshire accent.
Well, I'll say to that is I've got COPD from 20 years of inhaling people smoke before the smoking ban. I've never smoked in my life. I've got damaged lungs. I am absolutely certain that the vaccines reduce my chance of getting really ill. I think it is absolutely true that for the majority of people, if you're young and healthy, there's very little chance of dying from COVID. It depends on whether you believe that playing a full role in society and helping people who are not in the same fortunate position as you is the right way to go, or whether you want to take a more individualistic approach to things. That's down to you. That's all I'd say about it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe in compulsory vaccination, but I do think it is a really, really good idea. I mean, I'm not saying to the people that are coming to the gigs that I'm doing, you've got to show proof of vaccination or whatever, and I wouldn't have done that even if I had the opportunity to do so. But I'm just talking about basic human compassion and looking after the more vulnerable in society. In this particular instance, I'm one of them. So, so there you go. There's something to think about anyway.
Yeah, let's not go into we don't need to go through this conversation again. But I agree. I'm against vaccine passports. I'm against. But at the end of the day, I don't see the harm in someone taking an LFT before they go to a gig. It seems a fairly responsible thing to do. It also looks like that, obviously, with the Omicron variant, just seems to be less risky than what was happening with Delta. And also, everybody now has had the opportunity to decide whether they want to have a vaccination or not.
Yeah.
And if you want to go to a gig, you're taking that risk, obviously. And also, I don't have a problem with wearing a mask in a shop or on a bus, because there might be vulnerable people that I could pass it on to.
Absolutely.
But if you go to a gig, you've now had the opportunity to. It's time to have gigs back. And if you're at a gig, you're maybe taking a risk. You're maybe not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly my point. Obviously during the first stage of lockdown, I was really seriously isolating because there was no vaccines, and it was exactly people like me who were in the vulnerable category. Then the vaccines came in. I took the vaccines. I was still being very careful and watching the science. As I say, it's nothing to do with the government. I mean, no one should ever confuse whatever your opinions on the vaccines are. It shouldn't be based on the Tories or the government telling you what to do. This is science. So logically, if you're not going to take a vaccine, you shouldn't go to hospital. If you think you've got something wrong with you somewhere else, because you think you're invulnerable or whatever. Now, I mean, so the point about it is now, obviously, the Omicron variant is less dangerous. So I've taken the calculated position of saying, right, I now think that I'm prepared to take the risk, which is that I might catch COVID. And I have already caught it, and it was a very, very, very slight dose. And I'm prepared to get out there, because it is really important that we start things up again. It's really important that we get out there and do things again. And I'm absolutely 100% for that. But at the same time, I think we just have to be a bit careful as well. And that, it's just the obvious thing. I mean, if I get a stinking bout of COVID while I'm on tour, even if I could theoretically still carry on doing the gigs, I won't do them. Equally, I would hope that anybody who's obviously got a really stinking bout of COVID wouldn't come to a gig that I was doing, or indeed a gig that anyone was doing. That's just, it's not the flu. It is getting easier. We know that. Anyway, that's all I've got to say on the subject. I think I need to go in a minute, because I've actually got to go and put some posters up before I've got huge amounts to do, because I'm off on the road for a week. And you may know I run a festival called Glastonbury, and the posters have just come out for that. So I've got to do a lot of publicity for that.
Have we got as a poster online? Can I bring that on the screen?
Yeah, well, if you go to the you go to my website. I don't know. It's on. I haven't actually put it up on my Facebook page yet. But if you put Glastonbury into Google, you'll find it quickly.
I found it in the Glastonbury group. Glastonbury 2022, the return. Well,
yeah,
I'll bring it up on the screen. But for anyone who's tuned in, you are on tour. You're doing a European tour, but this is the UK leg of it. This Saturday, I will be hosting it. I'll be asking you a few questions. Don't worry if you thought that I've kept the best questions for Saturday. So I'll worry about
cool.
a wee Q&A with Attila the Stockbroker this Saturday at the Icebox in Glasgow.
And a wee Q&A and a lot of poetry, and some dub poetry and some acoustic songs.
I'm excited about this dub poetry, man. I think that the way that your delivery and your accent going with the music's working really, really well. So I'm excited to see more of that and hear more stories. 40 years, celebrating 4 decades. With a rare gig in Glasgow at the Icebox, a Saturday, £8 from the link in the description, or £10 on the door. And if you're very skint and you would like to go, then send me or Attila the Stockbroker a message, and we will try and sort you out. And yeah, man, I'll put the Glastonbury thing on. I'll let you go and put your posters up. And thank you very much.
Thanks very much for having me, Mark. I shall put this up on my page a bit later when you send me the link. I'm really looking forward to coming to Scotland, not just Glasgow. I'm doing Edinburgh the day after at the wonderful Bannerman's, where I do I always do, or nearly always do my Edinburgh shows at Bannerman's. That is my favourite rock bar in
Settle in Stirling.
In Stirling, I'm playing the Settle In, which is, I've never been there, but I gather that it has got, I mean, obviously, the other thing about football, apart from the football connected with my gigs, the other thing is real ale, or craft beer, or whatever, one or the two, proper beer anyway. And the Settle In in Stirling appears to have lots and lots of that. And that night I won't be driving anywhere. In fact, Glasgow is the only gig where I will be driving anywhere afterwards of the 3 in Scotland. So I'm sadly missing out on the very fine craft beers of Glasgow. In fact, I'm drinking one right now. I believe this is a Glaswegian one I've got right now. It's Brew Gooder Brewery, and I believe that is a Glasgow brewery, which is actually donating money to good causes. So there you go.
And there's Lindsay Stewart saying the Settle In's great wee place, which I think if I'm right in saying, it's the oldest pub in Stirling. Right. Nice log fire.
And I'm doing that one with one of your compatriots, Pauline Valence, who is a harpist. Because obviously I do early. She's a harpist who combines She does her own songs, but she does ridiculously funny versions of one song set to the tune of another. For instance, I suggested she did Joy Division Oven Gloves by Half Man Half Biscuits, set to the tune of the William Tell Overture, and it worked brilliantly. I'll certainly be doing that one on that. So that's on the Tuesday. The Tuesday's in Stirling.
Tuesday in Stirling. Amazing. How Dubin says, I agree with some of what you're saying. I understand your viewpoint. What a nice. That's good, isn't it? We agree to disagree, and agree with most of it, and agree to disagree on other parts.
I respect that. As I say, I'm not demanding that everybody who comes to my gigs has been vaccinated. I would hope that you would be. That's down to you. I would certainly hope that if you've got COVID, you please don't come. That's all I would say.
Alan will be there on Saturday night. Mark McKinnon says, I was at a gig on Monday night. LFT didn't register. Don't see the problem. Quite happy to LFT. And that's a guy who doesn't believe in the vaccine either, but he's happy to make sure he's not got it. So absolutely brilliant, guys. I'll hopefully see you all on Saturday night at Icebox. And good luck. You're playing? You're playing somewhere down south this week first.
Yes, the first gig is on Thursday at our local arts centre, along with the great songwriter Rob Johnson and Paul Simmons from The Men They Couldn't Hang, main songwriter for The Men They Couldn't Hang, very popular in Glasgow, and his partner Naomi Bedford, who's a wonderful singer-songwriter in her own right. And then you can see from there, I've got loads, and there's loads more coming as well. There's going to be loads in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Holland, all over England, and hopefully. And the other thing is, when I come up for the festival in August, I really do. After that, I want to do some more gigs in Scotland. I really do. I want to go to places like Dundee, and all the other places apart from just Edinburgh, Glasgow,
we can
Stirling, and Aberdeen. So, anyone who wants to put me on, Attila at AttilaTheStockbroker.com. So the Attila Comes to Scotland tour. I want to play in Greenock, where my ancestors came from. In the 200, 300 years of ancestry in Greenock. As I say,
Greenock might be a wee bit trickier, but I could definitely get you Dundee. I could get you Perth. And I can probably.
This will be good.
I can get the Isle of Skye. Actually, I'm actually booking.
Oh, I love that. I've played Lerwick. I've played Lerwick. I know it's called Lerwick. I did the Lerwick Festival a couple of years, 3 or 4 years ago. That was great, actually. That was so. It's not quite true. But I don't really think of that as. That is obviously Scotland, but it's sort of not the mainland. It's somewhere else. But yeah, I want to do more gigs in Scotland. I've been doing this for 40 years. It really is about time. I literally have done more gigs in Canada or Australia than I have in Scotland, and that's stupid.
And that's the Glastonbury 2022 festival, and that is on the Friday the 3rd to the Sunday the 5th of June. I'll put that in the comments as well.
And we got one of you got Patrick's coming down, Callum Baird from Edinburgh, wonderful left-wing singer-songwriter coming down for the Sunday for that one as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'll see you
on Saturday.
Yeah, brilliant.
Soapy saying awesome. Thank you very much, mate.
Okay, all the very best.
All the best.
Cheers.
And we've actually got a wee dub song of our own to finish with. This is the You Call That Radio Dub. Thank you, Attila the Stockbroker. We'll see you Saturday at the Icebox.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah, no respect in the respect to the man like Mark. They love what the man talk on the radio. In case you never know. You call that radio, call that the radio. You call that radio, call that the radio. Come and say, my name, I'll just go with the flow. My name, I'll just go with the flow. So till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. Till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. Boom. Lot of mercy. Yo. You call that radio. You call that radio. Come and say, don't you be another man, I'll go lose your head. Say, don't you be another, me say, I'll lose the head. Me say, radio, call that a radio. Straight from out of Glasgow. Straight from out of Glasgow, nice enough for the studio. Come and say, my name, I'll just go with the flow. My name, I'll just go with the flow. So till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. Till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. No radio. You call that the radio. Them man I give you me a lot of subject, and them I think a man you can't up.
Oh yeah, I meant to say actually, coming up, we're back tomorrow night we're going to London for the Prime Sinister on You Call That Radio on tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. The inventor of syllabalism, underground hip-hop artist, London filmmaker, over 2 million streams independently and organically off his own back. That's the Prime Sinister. Tomorrow night on You Call That Radio. And then on Wednesday, we've got the brilliant Hannah Curry, who is going to bring the Cast of Talent, which is a documentary that's on the iPlayer just now about extras, the life of an extra, a background artist. I've done that a couple of times, but these guys really do it. They do it for realsies. So that's going to be a good crack. That's Wednesday night on You Call That Radio. And also, I know that some of you are waiting on, we've got the introduction to French Hip Hop Show. Sadly, due to an emergency last week, we had to reschedule a few things, but I hope that will be next week, hopefully. Everything that is subject to change this week and next. Jamesy Man says, interesting conversation, topics and good music. Thank you, Jamesy. Good show. What are you up to now? Was enjoying that. I fancy a dance now. Well, Louise, you can have a dance on. You will hopefully be having a dance with us all on Saturday at the Icebox. Thanks, guys. Fab says Stuart. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. We're back tomorrow night. And one more time, a shout out for Saturday night's gig at the Icebox. We've kind of did it at short notice, but ticket sales are going well already. It's £8 from, if you buy them advance, £10 on the door. It's bring your own bottle as well. So it's a cheap night out. And if you're really skint, send us a message and we will try and get you on the guest list for the first few people who get in touch. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Attila the Stockbroker. 4 decades of poetry and music. So, yeah, come and see it live for the first Glasgow gig in 10 years. Buzzing for it. We will see you then on Saturday, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow night for the Prime Sinister live from London.
Your call is very important.